Hello everyone, today I'm here to share with you all of the books I read in January. So here we are, the first month of 2022 already come and gone, and I thought I would bring wrap-ups back because I'm starting to get into a somewhat regular, dare I say, routine, but I just want to do wrap-ups because I like doing them, and as much as I want to, I can't review every single book I've read throughout the entire month. It's just not feasible. So if you don't know, usually with wrap-ups, I start with my least favorite book, working up to my favorite book. Before I get into that, I'm going to try to share stats each and every month of books that I read. So in total this month, I read 7 books, which I think is a great start to the whole year. And breaking it down even further, I read 6 adult books and 1 young adult book. Breaking that down even further, I read 2 romances, 3 thrillers, 1 adult sci-fi, and 1 YA sci-fi. And if you guys don't know, I did a video a while ago talking about 22 books I want to read in 2022 that are backlist books, and I read 3 of those already this month, so kicking off to a good start of the entire year. I'm very pleased. So like I said, we're gonna start with my least favorite book, working up to my favorite. The first book I want to talk about, my least favorite book of the whole month, Out of His League by Caroline, I forget. It was a NetGalley book, and I had high hopes for it, and sadly I did not enjoy it. It was just nothing happened in it. So we had a character named Gretchen who is a big baseball fan. She has a favorite player, a favorite team, and everything like that. And what do you know, she meets her favorite player at the airport. I totally forgot his name. Let's just say it's Josh because I have no clue. But she meets him. He just got, what's the word? He got sent down to the minor leagues because he just wasn't doing as good. And so they hit it off immediately. They hook up that night, and they have really good chemistry, and it kind of goes on from there. The whole book is about them deciding, should we be together or should we not? And it was just boring. It was honestly just a book full of steamy scenes with not a lot of plot to it. It just, nothing happened. And that's coming from a huge baseball fan. You guys know how much I love baseball. Like, go Braves always.
The Braves are world champions!
But it just, nothing, like, it talked a lot about baseball, yes, but there was just no meat to this story at all. It was just kind of just steaminess with no plot, which, I mean, it's not the worst thing, but you gotta have some sort of plot to it. I gave it 2 stars. I really wanted to love it because it's baseball. I love steamy books, but sadly this one just kind of fell for me. So moving on. Then my only 3-star of the month is A Flicker in the Dark by Stacey Willingham. The more I think about it, it might be a 2-star. This was actually the first book that I read the entire year, and I had really high hopes for this one as well. I mean, I honestly have high hopes for all the books I go into, but are those hopes met? Sometimes yes, sometimes no. This one is all about a character named Chloe, who when she was 12, her dad was arrested and turned out to be a serial killer. He killed a whole bunch of young girls, and so she is very obviously traumatized from it. And so it picks up many years later, like I want to say it's the 20-year anniversary of him being arrested coming up, and all of a sudden these murders are starting to happen again with all these young girls going missing and getting murdered, and Chloe's like, is this a copycat killer? Am I seeing similarities, or am I just like, is nothing really that similar going on? So it takes place like in 2 timelines. You really go back to when things were happening with her dad and figuring out that her dad killed all these girls, and then now to when all these murders are happening. And it sounds so interesting, like her dad was a serial killer and these murders are happening again, and you're constantly trying to figure out, but sadly it just didn't deliver. It was very predictable, the ending. You could see it coming from 100 miles away, and it didn't even like have that gratification with the ending with thrillers, you know, when you get the final reveal. Sometimes yes, you can see it coming, but it makes sense, you know what I'm saying? Like, you're like, oh, this all makes sense. This one, it just didn't. Like, there was no real reason, and it just, I don't know, I just didn't really enjoy it, which is so sad because the plot, like the synopsis sounded so intriguing. I was like, man, this could be a great movie and show, like it's kind of been already made before and things like that, but I just, it sounded so cool. And also we have an unreliable narrator, and I just loathe that in thrillers because you can't tell if they're telling the truth or not. It's just like so annoying because I've read it 50 times before. Like, I get it, we don't know if you're really seeing things or if you're like, you know, hallucinating them. it's just the kind of the same old, you know. It's just, but I just right now it's a 3 out of 5. The more I think about it, it might be bumped down. I don't know. I'm gonna be as realistic as possible this year when it comes to ratings. And then I have a whole bunch of 4 stars. These are really not in any order, so I'm just gonna pick one up that's a 4 star. The Maid by Bonita Prose, another thriller that I read this month. And this one I would say is like a cozy mystery thriller. In fact, I would say it's very like kind of a warm thriller, if that makes any sense. I guess that's what cozy thrillers mean, cozy mysteries. But this one was just, I really enjoyed it. So this one we follow a character named Molly, who is Molly the Maid. She works this really grand, illustrious hotel, and she really enjoys her job. She loves the simplicity of it. She loves going in and cleaning after people. And basically, one day she goes into this suite that she always goes into because these couples a lot of times will just stay there for a long time, of Mr. and Mrs. Black. And Mr. Black is found dead on his bed, and she's like, oh my goodness. And she somehow becomes the prime suspect for the entire murder, and it kind of goes from there. It's got that like kind of Agatha Christie setting where it's in one place, you have multiple characters, things like that. I really enjoyed it. I gave it a 4 out of 5. Molly is a character that she reads a lot like someone on the spectrum, which I really appreciated because a lot of people took advantage of her and didn't think highly of her, and I loathe them so much for that. And of course she proved them wrong because she's amazing. So I love that. I think it had, I love that it had great representation. And I just love Molly as a character. You really came to love her, and she loved her grandmother, but her grandmother had passed away, so she was having a hard time finding people to trust. And so throughout this whole book, you wanted to scream to her like, don't trust these people that you're trusting, but she doesn't really pick up on social cues as well. But eventually she finds people that she trusts that are amazing, and it's just a really kind of warm thriller. It's not like scary at all. I give it a 4 out of 5. It was a fun time. I enjoyed it. Next up is a book that was on my 22 books to read in 2022, and then Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir. I wanted to make this a priority this year, and I'm glad I read it, but it didn't live nearly as up to The Martian in my opinion. And I know a lot of people love this book. They give it a 5 out of 5. I do think the way you consume this book is a big proponent of that, because when I said I was going to read it, a lot of you guys said, listen to it. It's the best way to do it. And I fully agree with you. It's probably amazing, but just realistically for time and things for me, I can't listen to audiobooks. I wish I could, but I just can't. So I had to, you know, physically read it or e-read it, you know what I mean? But this book, I gave it 4 out of 5. It just wasn't up to The Martian. So this book, I'm going to try to explain as best I can. We have a character named Ryland Grace who is a junior high school teacher, and basically, I'm gonna butcher this because it's all science and I'm not good at science. Basically, they learn that the sun is losing like energy, like it's losing its warmth because there's like these aliens, like these little like almost parasites that are going on to it. And so he gets approached by this woman who's with like the government, the top priority, and she's like, research this for me. And so he does, and they discover things, and basically we have that going on. And then in the beginning of the book, he wakes up on a spaceship, and he has no memory of how he got to be on this spaceship. He has no clue why he's on it, so he has to piece together while he's fitting in pieces of like, so he has to piece together why he's there. And so he has flashbacks a lot of times, like he'll read a certain thing on the ship and he'll have a flashback of why he's there. And basically the world's gonna end because the sun is losing its warmth. That means food's gonna fail. That means oceans, you know, global warming, things like that. So he is on a ship that, and the project is called Project Hail Mary, to save the world, save the earth pretty much. And he has to go to this other star and figure out information. He has to send it back. And it's just an interesting book. He also meets another alien species named Rocky, which is just, that was my favorite part of the whole book. And I loved his humor in it. But I think with these books, especially Andy Weir's books, they have so much scientific jargon. Like, it is all consuming. And as someone that's not a science fan, I'm not. And that's okay. There's a lot of people that are great and they are amazing. I'm not like scientific by any means. It's hard to get into, but The Martian, it was a little bit easier because of Mark Watney. He was sarcastic, he was vulgar, but he was funny. And so he made it a lot more fun, I think. And Ryland was also a funny character, but he was kind of like dad funny. It really reminded me of like a middle-aged dad. He would just be like, oh, sugar, or something like that. He was funny in that regard, but I think this one just had way more science jargon that I couldn't understand than The Martian, so that's kind of why I knocked it down a peg, but that's just me. I think if you're a big fan of science, a big fan of outer space and galaxies and stuff like that, you'll love this book. It's great. I gave it a 4 out of 5. I would love to see it made into a movie. They probably are already in the works of it, but if I'm comparing it to The Martian, I just had such a love for The Martian and I thought the plot was a little bit more interesting in The Martian. But I am very happy I read it because, I'm trying to read more sci-fi books, and I really do enjoy Andy Weir's writing, even though a lot of it goes over my head. Next up, I have a romance, and that is Weather Girl by Rachel Lynn Solomon. This is her second adult book. This is about a character named Ari, who is a TV meteorologist, and she really loves her job. She also loves her boss, Torrance. Like, her boss, Torrance, is like her mentor, and she wants to learn more, but her boss is constantly consumed by her ex-husband, who also works at the station. Like, they're always bickering and making things horrible and making the work environment horrible. So Ari and Russell, who's like a sports reporter, decide to team up and to parent trap these two to get them to love each other again, to maybe make the workspace more habitable, and also maybe have Torrance have a little bit more time so she can, teach Ari and things like that. Ari is also dealing with depression. Her mother has depression, and she has it as well, but her mother never handled it well. She never took medicines, never went to therapy, never just kind of did the right thing with it. So Ari's determined to do that. She also kind of hides it from people because she doesn't want them to know that she has depression. She keeps like it kind of in the back burner. She doesn't want people to know kind of her deep, dark secrets. So she has to be happy Ari all the time. So she can't trust anybody. But it was a really good book. I really enjoyed it. I gave it a 4 out of 5. I wanted more of like the whole work environment, like the TV station aspect of it, especially the meteorology. I found that interesting, and I wanted more of her like discovering storms and talking about storms and her work day, but it wasn't there as much. It was mostly focused on the romance and depression, which isn't bad at all, but I just kind of wanted more of the work environment, if you will. I love Rachel Solomon's YA books, and I love her adult books as well. Highly recommend. And then my last 4-star is Skyward by Brandon Sanderson, the only YA book I read, another sci-fi book. And actually, I'm filming this like 5 days before January ends because your girl's pre-filming as always, and I haven't technically finished it yet. I'm 55% into it. I know I'm going to finish it before January ends, but I haven't finished it since. So right now, for me, it's sitting at a 4-star. It's really good. I'm really enjoying it. So it's about a character named Spencer who lives on this planet called Defiant, and they live like in caverns and things like that, and they have to constantly fight this alien race that comes in all the time named the Krell, and it's like kind of floating debris everywhere. But Spencer is kind of deemed a coward because her dad died like a coward's death, not fighting. And Spencer's always wanted to clear his name. She's also always wanted to be a pilot just like him. So the whole first book is about her trying to learn how to be a pilot while people are constantly like pulling her down, saying she's a coward, saying her father's a coward, and things like that. It says, no one will let Spencer forget what her father did, yet fate works in mysterious ways. An accidental discovery in a long forgotten cavern might just provide her with a way to claim the stars. And I'm really enjoying this. I know there's 3 books out in the series, and I definitely plan to read them, hopefully this year, but right now it's sitting at a 4-star for me. I'm going to put in my thoughts of how I finished it and what I definitively rated it right now. Editing Heather here. So yeah, I would definitively give this book a 4.5 out of 5. I really enjoyed it. I thought my favorite part of it was Spence as a character. She grew leaps and bounds, and I love the journey that she took. I also just really thought it was a fun, adventurous sci-fi book that I will definitely be continuing off the series. Yeah, so 4 out of 5. Really enjoyed it. Brandon Sanderson does not disappoint. Also, it would be a great sci-fi series to get into. So very, very happy I read it. And the last book that I want to talk about is my favorite of the month and my first 5-star ever for the year. And that is In My Dreams, I Hold a Knife by Ashley Winstead. Forgive this horrible sticker on it. Target, why do you do this to me?
Stop it.
I read this on ebook, and I had to buy a physical form. I loved it that much. This book is another book off my 20 to 22 books I want to read in 2022, as well as this one, Kicking It Off Great. But this one is a thriller that everyone raved about last year, so I thought I would finally read it, and I'm so glad I did. So this book is full of characters that you will hate, and I usually do not like books like that. Unlikable characters, I'm like, no, get out of here. But when it's written really, really good, you love it, and that is exactly the case with this book. So this book, we follow a character named Jessica Miller, and this is 10 years after her college graduation, and basically a big reunion's happening, and so she's going back there, and she meets up with all of her old college friends, and there was a murder of a character. Her name was Heather, which is just, it was so weird because my name is Heather. They kept talking about Heather and Heather and Heather, and I'm like, she was blonde too, and I was like, this is so weird. But then again, she was really popular and everything came easy to her, and I'm like, oh, it's nothing like that, Heather. But anyway, one of their friends, Heather, was murdered 10 years ago, and they haven't really talked since. And so, you know, they meet up 10 years later at the high school reunion. The boyfriend, Jack, everyone always suspected that he killed Heather, but no one's been able to prove it 100%. And basically, during this trip, they're going to get down to who killed her. Like, it's one of the friends. It's got to be one of the friends. Let's hash it out. It says 6 friends, 1 college reunion, 1 unsolved murder. So we go back in time with constantly Jessica's point of view, also with other characters' point of view. I believe there's 7 friends in this friend group, and they're all horrible. I'm going to be straight with you. They're all horrible. Like, some of them have redeeming qualities, but at the end of the day, they ain't. Like, even the main character, Jessica, like, you're just like, girl. It was written so well that you just had to keep reading and had to keep reading. Like, I could not stop reading this book, like, and it did not disappoint. You think the ending's predictable, but then when you get to like the ending, you're like, whoa. It was just so good. Like, this proves that if you don't like books with unlikable characters, that you can still love that book, if that makes any sense. Like, I don't like books with unlikable characters. I have to cling on to a character and, you know, see some redemption in them, see some good in them. That's just kind of how I am. But this book, these characters, like I said, were just straight up horrible, but I was obsessed with it. Gosh, I can't wait to see what else she writes. I loved it. 5 out of 5. Can't talk about it enough. You're probably sick of hearing about it by now, but this will for sure be on my favorite books by the end of the year, hands down. So there you have the 7 books I read this month, kicking off 2022 to a great start. I'm really happy, and I hope this stride keeps continuing. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you in my next video. Bye.